Welcome, weary warrior. Sit down and let me tell you of a place where monsters dwell, but there are countless treasures to behold. Make sure to bring plenty of torches, lest you be caught unawares in the dark. This is a review of Shadowdark. Let's dive in. Here we have the Shadowdark RPG book. This is the special edition cover in nice leather. I actually really do like this cover art. You will actually see the real artwork within the book. It looks pretty sweet in person. And it comes with one book ribbon, which is also handy dandy. So what is Shadowdark RPG? Classic gaming with elegant execution, Shadowdark RPG is what old-school fantasy gaming would look like after being redesigned with 50 years of innovation. The game is fast, familiar, intuitive, and deadly. It's built for sword-and-sorcery adventures, where fell monsters slither in darkness and frosty gems glint upon forgotten thrones, waiting to be discovered. In Shadowdark RPG, real time comes into play. A torch only holds back the looming darkness for 1 hour of actual game time. There isn't a moment to spare when your only light source is guttering low. Get ready for old school gaming in a whole new light. And as you could see in the inside covers, we actually have relevant pieces of information like in most OSR books. So if you're not part of the OSR scene, a lot of these books make use of pretty much every inch of paper inside of the book, including covers. So it's always nice to see rules and stats on the inside covers, or at least the most important ones, because that makes for an easy find. You're not having to look through the book a whole lot to get to what you want. So the book can be divided into 3 parts. You're going to have your character information, gameplay, and then GM tools. It's pretty much standard throughout most of these RPG books. There's no setting or anything like that, so there really isn't 4. We just have their standard 3. So let's talk about character creation for a moment. I would classify Shadowdark's character creation as being easy in its complexity. You do have to roll for things such as stats and talents, but really, you're just going down the list and choosing options that you find appealing. First, you're going to choose an ancestry, where your character was raised. We have dwarves, elves, goblins, half-orcs, halflings, and humans, and each ancestry has a special ability that makes them unique. For example, dwarves start with +2 HP and roll hit points per level with advantage, whereas the OG halfling can become invisible for 3 rounds once per day. Next, we have the classes, but don't get too excited. There's actually only 4 of them here in the book. But as we'll see later on in another video, there's actually more classes to be had, as well as more ancestries. So what are the 4 classes that we have? Well, your standard. We have a fighter, a priest, the thief, and of course a handy-dandy wizard. And that's all. On the surface, it might seem like there isn't anything remarkable about the classes that don't cast spells, but the book makes it pretty clear that if a character can do something because their class is assumed to be good at that thing, then they can do it. There's no rolls necessary, unless there's a reasonable chance for failure, which, I mean, doesn't everybody kind of play like that? I guess it makes sense here because there are no skills. So after you choose a class, you're going to choose or roll for a background. You're going to choose an alignment, which we have 3, chaotic, lawful, neutral. That's pretty standard. And then we're going to determine our title before we get to gear. Now the thing about titles is they're dependent upon what level you are and which alignment you are in. For example, the fighter, if you're lawful, starts with squire from levels 1 to 2. If you're a chaotic fighter, you're a knave. If you're neutral, you're a warrior. So, go figure. I think if anything, the most complex aspect to character creation for Shadowdark is choosing spells. That is, if you're a spellcaster. Spells in this book are split between priest spells and wizard spells. There's no schools of like evocation that, your wizard can cast fireball, magic missile, and this, but the cleric from that same school can cast this spell. It's actually all separated by the actual class. So you have 5 tiers of priest spells here, and that kind of seems like there isn't really a whole lot. And then you have 5 tiers for wizard spells, which are a little bit more than the priest, but still, given the fact that, in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, you have like tons and tons of options. This might not seem like a whole lot, but then again, you have to really think about what you're really going to use, what is actually going to be helpful. I actually do agree with this limited spell list. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Okay, so we're ready to roll some dice. So what do you need to know? Shadowdark is your standard D20 based system that also makes use of inspiration, although they're called luck points here. Since there are no skills, you'll be rolling most of your rolls during combat. Initiative is based on how everyone is sitting. Yeah, it's one of those. But you actually do roll for initiative, which is your standard Dex mod D20 roll. And whoever gets the highest roll starts, but turn order goes around in clockwise order. Also, it should be worth mentioning, the book wants you to keep initiative for the entire playtime. That means as you're exploring, you're taking turns. Something else that is different here, which I've seen touted as the big thing for this game, is how torches work. Since you're exploring dark dungeons, you're going to need a torch, or access to the light spell. Torches last for an hour's worth of real time, so if you've been playing for an hour, your torch is going to run out. Everything else is your standard of fare that you've probably seen in other games, such as old school essentials, swords and wizardry, dungeon crawl classics, or any other OSR fantasy game. You explore, you roll to see if there are any encounters, and then you fight things. The only thing that I've noticed that isn't standard is how you can gain XP by carousing, of all things. When you carouse, you spend some of your hard-earned loot to go out on the town and party. When you do, you roll a d8 to determine what comes of it, such as XP or a new ally. Also, depending on how much you spend on carousing, you'll receive a bonus for the outcome roll, which is why you see all the results go all the way up to 14 plus. I actually really like this system. It seems fairly intuitive, especially since loot is usually how XP is calculated in these OSR type games. Something else that I didn't mention when I spoke about magic is that when you cast magic, you can actually have mishaps with your spells. And I really like this. Like, OSR games are notorious for this type of stuff, and I just wish more games that aren't OSR actually do include this. Like, Dungeons and Dragons would be a whole nother game. If you rolled poorly, something bad happens to your character. I mean, that's just chaos, but that's also fun in my eyes. There's a wizard mishaps table, and then there's one for priest as well. So if you don't roll successfully, or if you roll like a 1 when you're casting a priest spell, then your god gets angry at you, and then you have to appease them somehow. And I also really do like that it's separated by tiers. So we have a tier 1 through 2 table and a tier 3 through 4 table. And then we have the tier 5 table. So yeah, be careful with that one. To be honest, there really isn't a whole lot to say about the Game Master's tools. There's just a ton of random tables for anything that you might need for your games. It does go through the whole shtick about like what your role is as the actual game master and how to, set up tables successfully, the whole session 0 thing, and then information on running games and like your standard DCs, like what's hard, normal, and easy. I do actually like that you can roll to see what happens to the PC's torches, although some of the options seem very situational. But of course, we have tables for random encounters, traps and hazards, and how much XP you should be awarding at certain levels, or something's happened, so roll a D100, or table of rumors, just things that you might need but aren't totally necessary. And there's been tons and tons of publications, books, PDFs, whatnot on Drive-Thru RPG that are like, 100 different rumors to find at a tavern or something like that, or like 1,000 books to read in the cyberpunk universe or things like that. So you do have like an NPC creator, which is going to be handy from time to time. Any rivals, NPC names, although that's always funny when they have you build out a name by syllable. So you have like a prefix, syllable 2, syllable 3, and a suffix. Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of those, if you couldn't tell. How to travel over land on hex maps, settlement maps, taverns, what foods are in taverns, what drinks are in taverns, a shop generator, more artwork, which, by the way, is absolutely beautiful in this book. Different encounters, so you have an Arctic encounters, artisan district, castle district, the whole 9 yards are in this section. It's just tools for the GM to use. You might not use them all, you might use some of them, but hey, they're here if you want to use them. Towards the end, though, we have the monster manual, which has a lot of monsters, although they seem to be of the usual stock. And then we get the magic items and the loot tables, and which again, there's nothing really new here. I am going to point out a little bit of a gripe, though, that I have with this specific section, the monster manual specifically. And that is the entry on the Tarrasque. And I know this is just a nitpick, so if you're not into nitpicks, then please feel free to fast forward. But here we have a picture of the Tarrasque. Awesome. We all know that Tarrasques are like the biggest monster in any fantasy universe, Dungeons and Dragons or otherwise. And yet, when I look at its attacks, we have the attack Sever. Okay? So that's pretty much a standard ability. On a natural attack roll of 18 plus, the attack also severs a random limb. Now, my only gripe about this is, if the Tarrasque is so big, why is it not just gulping you in one attack? Why does it need to, like, well, first off, I don't even think my whole arm is going to fit in its mouth, let alone any other part of my body. So I'm just going to get gobbled up. That's my nitpick. I know, it's pretty stupid, but that's kind of the things that I notice when I actually read through these books. The layout is where I have the biggest issue with this product. This book is huge, like 325 pages big, and the pages are actually very thick. This book also doesn't lay flat when it's open, and that's actually a big problem. I have to constantly hold this thing down, and even then, I feel the book sapping my strength just to keep it open. So why should I actually have to babysit a book? Then there's the monster manual. It's cluttered, and not in a consistent way. I see letters and numbers, and nothing, aside from HP and AC, is standard. So now I have to learn a new set of abbreviations and letters. The one thing that I am going to praise, though, is the artwork. It is absolutely stellar. The cover of the special edition is something truly special. Lucas Court did an absolutely amazing job with it, and here you can actually see what it looks like on paper, but it's not just Lucas Court who's done all the artwork. There's a whole entire team of artists that did an absolutely amazing job. And one of the biggest things that I absolutely love when books actually do this is that they actually credit the artists for everything that they have put into this book. That shows dedication, and that the people who write this are very appreciative of the work that's been put in. This book is basically another OSR system, which has been done quite a bit, especially as of late. I could have seen there being a reason for this book if it was built around a setting, but really, there isn't one here. Instead, we just get some gimmicks and your standard, OSR type play here. The torch lasting for 1 hour of play is a gimmick. You can just as easily do this without it. Overall, I have to ask myself, what is the purpose of this book? And really, I think it's to introduce players coming from 5th edition over to the OSR side of things. It's to make the concept of OSR appealing to newer gamers. Does it succeed? I actually think it kind of does. Are you going to get anything out of it if you're already invested in the OSR scene? Probably not. I mean, we still have old school essentials, which to me the biggest appeal with that series is that you can actually buy these really thin books and pass them out to players depending on like what class they are and things like that. But then I also have to provide my own other point that I'm against that, where if you aren't able to get those thin books, you can get the referee's guide and the player's guide, which are just about as thick as Shadowdark. And I'm pretty sure those books don't stay closed either. There's also games like Morkborg and Pirateborg and Cyborg, which actually have settings tied to them and are just as accessible as any of the other games, if not even more. Originally, I was going to say I didn't like this book when I first read through it. I was contemplating why this was even a thing. I mean, it has beautiful artwork, I will give it that, but 4 classes and not a whole lot going in it that other books have done. Then I picked up the rest of my Kickstarter, and I kind of started to see where it was all going. So in the next video, we're going to take a look at the supplements for Shadowdark and how it doesn't really tie in, but I can see where the company is going, and I have to say, I kind of dig it. So, feel free to leave a comment down below, give this video a huge thumbs up to support the series, and I will see you guys in the next video.